Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the insights that matter. Today, we're plunging headfirst into a really high-stakes legal battle. It's had the tech world on the edge of its seat. And it's a decision that directly impacts how you and I interact with information every single day. We're talking about the landmark US v. Google antitrust ruling on remedies, which just came down on September 2nd, 2025, from Judge Amit P. Mehta. Now, this deep dive isn't going to be just about dense legal jargon, okay? It's really about the future of Google, it's about the competitive landscape of the internet, and frankly, how these incredibly powerful tech giants are being held accountable. Our mission here is to, distill the most important facts, the surprising insights from the sources we've looked at, and give you a comprehensive understanding without getting totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, and this ruling really was pivotal. I mean, it wasn't just significant for Alphabet Inc., Google's parent company. It sets a new precedent for the entire technology sector. And maybe more importantly, it shapes the evolving landscape of antitrust enforcement, especially as we navigate this rapidly changing age of AI. The implications here are they're far-reaching.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The biggest news first. The thing that sent shockwaves and stock prices sky high.
Yeah.
Google, and this was against many predictions, successfully averted what the Department of Justice, the DOJ, had sought. They called them catastrophic structural remedies.
Pretty intense phrase, right?
Yeah. The DOJ really pushed for a breakup. They were targeting Chrome and Android, basically Google's superhighways, to search dominance.
Exactly.
I mean, Chrome alone, world's most popular browser, it generates nearly 40% of Google's U.S. search volume. And it's valued at an estimated, $100 billion?
That's the figure, yeah.
Losing those essential distribution channels?
Yeah.
Well, it would have been catastrophic.
Indeed. And Judge Mehta's reasoning for rejecting these extreme outcomes was quite clear. He found the DOJ had overreached. He grounded his decision in the principle of proportionality, basically. The remedy has to fit the violation, And crucially, the court found the government failed to establish a strong enough causal link between Google owning Chrome and Android and the specific illegal stuff proven at trial. He actually said, in his own words, that Google did not use them to effect any illegal restraints.
So it wasn't just the principle, but the actual link wasn't proven strongly enough.
Exactly. And beyond the legal causality, the judge also expressed, deep skepticism about the practicalities of a breakup like that. He characterized a potential Chrome divestiture, for instance, as incredibly messy and highly risky. And he warned about substantial product degradation and a loss of consumer welfare. Essentially, he worried about breaking something that, for most users, actually works pretty well.
Right. Don't fix what isn't broken, or at least don't break it more trying to fix it. And the immediate impact. Tell us about that.
Oh, it was monumental. I mean, a strategic victory of epic proportions for Google. It preserved that integrated ecosystem search, Chrome, Android, which is just so central to their whole business model.
And the stock market noticed, I take it?
Oh, yeah. Alphabet stock, GOGL, rallied significantly, 7-8% in after-hours trading. That's an estimated $144 billion added to its market cap, its total value.
Wow. Just like that.
Mostly because that massive breakup risk was suddenly officially off the table.
Okay, so Google wasn't broken up, which is huge, right? But this certainly doesn't mean it's just business as usual for them.
Not at all, no. The court then laid down a comprehensive set of behavioral remedies, basically a whole new rule book for how Google has to operate now.
A new rule book.
Mhm.
But is this rule book really enough to, foster competition? Or are these just minor tweaks for a company the size of Google?
That's the critical question, isn't it? And the centerpiece of these new guardrails is a broad prohibition. Google is basically banned from entering or maintaining any exclusive contract relating to the distribution of its key products. That includes Google Search, the Chrome browser, Google Assistant, and even, interestingly, its flagship AI app, Gemini.
Gemini too. Okay,
Yeah.
So what does that mean in practice?
Well, the big implication is Google can no longer condition the licensing of, say, the Google Play Store on a phone maker agreeing to exclusively preload Google Search or Chrome or give them top placement. That exclusivity is gone.
Okay, that sounds significant. And there was a second major remedy that really stood out to me, this novel data sharing mandate.
Yes, that's right. Google is now ordered to make certain search index and user interaction data available to what the court calls qualified competitors.
Okay, certain data. How significant is this data?
Well, it's potentially a game changer. This data is essentially the detailed roadmaps and traffic logs of the internet. It's described as the lifeblood of a modern search engine, absolutely essential for training those complex algorithms.
The lifeblood.
But, and this is crucial to note, Google isn't handing over the keys to the kingdom. It's not required to share its most valuable proprietary advertising data. That core revenue engine stays protected.
Ah, okay. So they share some driving data, but not the toll booth receipts, so to speak.
That's a decent analogy, yeah.
And were there other remedies mentioned?
A few others, yes. Google must now offer search and search ad syndication services at standard commercial rates that could help smaller players, potentially. And to make sure they follow these rules, a technological oversight committee will monitor Google's compliance for 6 years.
6 years, okay. Now, let's get into something you flagged as really nuanced and financially significant, this payment paradox. You're saying Judge Mehta banned exclusive deals but explicitly allowed Google to keep paying partners for default placement.
Exactly. It's a critical distinction. The judge's rationale was basically rooted in a concern about causing crippling downstream harms. He worried about hurting Google's distribution partners and maybe the broader digital ecosystem.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about Apple. They receive an estimated, $20 billion a year from Google for that default search spot on Safari. And Mozilla, who make Firefox, they actually argue that losing these kinds of payments could threaten their very existence.
Wow. So a ruling meant to help competition might have actually killed off an independent competitor if those payments stopped.
That was the concern the court seemed to acknowledge, yeah. These financial ties are incredibly deep.
Okay. So what does this all mean for you, the everyday user, and for these tech giants? How does this change things?
Well, it fundamentally transforms Google's relationships with these key partners like Apple and Samsung. That ban on exclusivity effectively converts what used to be long-term, locked-in deals into, essentially, recurring high-stakes auctions.
Auctions. So like highest bidder gets the default spot each year.
Pretty much. And that's where the power shift really lies. This gives immense negotiating power to the platform gatekeepers, especially Apple. Apple's now in a really enviable position. They can solicit competitive bids every year for that default search slot on Safari.
And the market reacted to that.
It sure did. Apple's stock, AAPL, rose about 3% after the ruling. The signal was clear. A potentially larger share of Google's search profits might now flow to Cupertino. It effectively makes Apple a kingmaker in the search market.
A kingmaker. Interesting. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. One of the most surprising and you said decisive elements here was the sudden rise of generative AI, Gen AI. Judge Mehta himself said, the emergence of Gen AI changed the course of this case. That's a powerful statement.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? If you look back at the original liability trial in late 2023, generative AI was barely a footnote. Judge Mehta even noted, no witness at the liability trial testified that Gen AI products posed a near-term threat to traditional search.
Right, it felt like science fiction almost back then.
Exactly. But fast forward to the remedies hearing in spring 2025, and the landscape was just completely transformed. You had the meteoric rise of platforms like OpenAI's ChatGPT Perplexity. The court genuinely seemed to view these new AI-powered answer engines as a credible, even if nascent competitive threat to Google's long-held dominance.
And that perception became a core justification for not breaking Google up.
Precisely. The logic seemed to be, if powerful new competitors are already emerging organically through AI, then a forced divestiture might be unnecessary or even counterproductive, right? It could potentially hinder Google's own ability to innovate and compete in this brand new AI arena.
So AI became a kind of shield for Google in this case.
In a way, yes. It establishes a powerful new defensive strategy for big tech firms facing antitrust scrutiny. They can point to the next big thing and argue that drastic remedies are trying to solve yesterday's problems and might weaken them against new challengers.
But the ruling wasn't just about letting Google off the hook because of AI, right?
Right.
It also looked forward.
That's right. It did aim to prevent Google from just leveraging its existing search monopoly to dominate the next era of information retrieval, the AI era. That prohibition on exclusive contracts we talked about, it was explicitly extended to Google's flagship AI product, Gemini. And the data sharing mandate specifically included AI firms as qualified competitors who could potentially get access to that search data.
Okay, so the court embraced AI as a competitive force, even extended the new rules to Google's Gemini AI. But you mentioned earlier there seems to be a pretty significant omission in the ruling, something many see as a ticking time bomb for Google.
Yes, the issue of the content creators and publishers. Their work, their articles, their websites, that's the raw material, the training data for these powerful AI models. And the ruling offered essentially no remedy for them.
How so? What's the problem they face?
Well, industry advocates like the News Media Alliance, they describe it as a no-win scenario.
Hmm.
Under Google's current setup, it seems creators are effectively forced to allow their work to be used for training AI products just to remain visible and indexed in Google search.
So it's an impossible choice. Give away your valuable intellectual property for AI training or risk becoming invisible online.
That's the dilemma they describe, yeah. Digital oblivion versus giving away the farm, basically.
Why is this such a major, you called it an unpriced risk, for Google then? They won the antitrust case on remedies.
They won the immediate battle, yes. But this victory, as some analysts suggest, may prove to be Pyrrhic. A victory won at too great a cost. Think about it. If publishers get emboldened, maybe by recent copyright lawsuits against other AI companies like OpenAI and Perplexity, and they launch successful legal challenges against Google,
What can happen?
it could fundamentally disrupt the data pipeline for Google's crucial AI models. It could potentially lead to really costly licensing agreements amounting to billions of dollars. That's the ticking time bomb, the unresolved publisher question.
Billions. Okay, so Google dodged the DOJ bullet, leveraged the AI argument, but this future storm might be brewing. How did Wall Street weigh all this up immediately after the ruling?
Oh, Wall Street reacted with nothing short of euphoria, as one report put it. Alphabet stock, as we said, surged immediately. That $144 billion added to its market cap tells the story.
And the analysts. What was the consensus there?
Overwhelmingly positive for Google. Firms like Wedbush called it broadly favorable. They had that memorable quote, "Government folds like a cheap suit."
Ouch.
Yeah. They raised their price target. RBC Capital Markets called the outcome benign. Oppenheimer labeled it the best case outcome for Google. And veteran analyst Gene Munster summed it up nicely. The regulatory bark is much bigger than the bite. The market clearly saw this as a huge win for Google, removing a massive overhang.
Okay, so the market loved it for Google, but what about Google's competitors? Does this ruling actually offer them a genuine chink in the armor?
Well, theoretically, yes. The end of exclusivity opens the door. Rivals like Microsoft's Bing, DuckDuckGo, they could now potentially bid for those default search slots, especially in valuable places like Apple's iOS.
And the data sharing.
Again, theoretically, that data sharing mandate is specifically designed to give a leg up to smaller players, and also to emerging AI startups like Perplexity or maybe even OpenAI if they qualify.
But you sound hesitant. What are the caveats?
Well, the practical impact is still far from certain. Google has already voiced concerns about privacy implications of sharing this data, and the whole implementation process will be overseen by this technical committee that could be slow, complex. Plus, the data access isn't permanent. It's structured as a temporary declining license over 5 years.
Declining, meaning they get less data over time.
That seems to be the structure, yes. Which is why some critics are calling it a poison chalice for competitors. It's like being given a super fast racing car but told you only get fuel for 5 years and the supply dwindles each year. It's incredibly hard to build a lasting competitive challenge under those kinds of conditions.
Right, a poison chalice. That makes sense. And I imagine not everyone thinks these remedies are enough.
Oh, absolutely not. There are strong voices of dissent. Critics like Gabriel Weinberg, the CEO of DuckDuckGo, he flat out called the remedies insufficient. He argues Google can still use its monopoly power to hold back competitors, even in the new AI search space.
And advocacy groups.
Groups like the American Economic Liberties Project were quite scathing. They described it colorfully as finding someone guilty of robbing a bank and then sentencing him to writing a thank you note for the loot. So, yeah, strong disagreement there.
Okay, so mixed reactions beyond Wall Street. And our deep dive isn't really over, is it? Because this ruling just kicks off the appeals process.
Exactly. This sets the stage for likely a multi-year appeals process. The legal battlefield is far from clear.
And who's likely to appeal?
It's almost a certainty that both sides will appeal aspects of this decision. Google and the DOJ. This could easily wind its way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, maybe by late 2027, perhaps even 2028.
What would Google appeal?
Google will likely focus on overturning the underlying liability finding itself. They'll argue their dominance is just due to having a superior product. They'll challenge how the market was defined and maybe the lenient causation standard they feel the court used.
And the DOJ. What's their angle for appeal?
The DOJ will argue the opposite, that the remedies are simply insufficient to restore competition. They'll likely contend that Judge Mehta's reliance on the speculative, nascent threat of AI was an error, and that the court should have focused more on the harms Google already caused rather than speculating about future competition from AI.
This whole saga, for many of us, it really brings parallels to mind with that landmark US v. Microsoft case from the late 90s, early 2000s. It kind of feels like history repeating itself, but maybe with an AI twist.
That's a very apt comparison. The parallels are striking. In both cases, you had a dominant tech company found guilty of illegally maintaining its monopoly. In both, the government pushed hard for a structural breakup splitting the company. But in both, the court ultimately rejected that and opted for behavioral remedies instead, along with some kind of oversight committee.
So is there a pattern emerging here?
It really suggests an emerging judicial doctrine, perhaps, for handling technology monopolies. There seems to be a willingness to find liability to say, yes, antitrust laws apply here, but also a clear preference for less disruptive behavioral fixes over actually breaking up these huge, complex tech companies, especially in such fast-moving markets.
Like, it makes this Google decision particularly significant then compared to Microsoft, maybe.
Well, what truly stands out is that this is the first major monopoly ruling against one of the modern tech giants, Google, Meta, Amazon, Apple. That makes it absolutely critical. It's setting precedents, potentially, for all those other pending antitrust cases against Meta, Amazon, and Apple.
So what precedents does it set?
Well, first, it affirms that established antitrust principles do apply to the digital economy. That's important. But it also clearly signals this judicial preference for behavioral fixes over breakups. And crucially, it shows that AI is now a potent defensive argument that incumbents can use. That's new.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. To recap our deep dive, Google definitely dodged a corporate earthquake, a breakup. But it's now navigating a totally new landscape, right? These behavioral guardrails, partners like Apple who are suddenly much more powerful and can demand higher payments. And looming over it all is this potentially huge future challenge from publishers over AI training data. So while the financial markets cheered, the competitive ground is undeniably shifting under Google's feet.
That sums it up well. And for you, listening, as someone trying to stay informed in this complex world, maybe consider this. The immediate competitive threat to Google might look, well, muted right now. But that combination of non-exclusive distribution deals and the mandated data access, it could, over time, allow a really well-funded and innovative competitor to gain a genuine foothold, maybe an AI-native company we haven't even seen rise yet.
So it's not just Google versus Bing anymore.
No, I think it's becoming a much more dynamic arena, potentially for a whole new generation of information services.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over, doesn't it? Will these new behavioral remedies actually foster a truly more competitive environment? Or will Google's immense financial resources just let it maintain dominance through a different method, maybe just a more expensive one, paying partners more? And how will that unresolved issue with content creators ultimately reshape the very foundation of generative AI? It really makes you wonder.